Good day, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jack Van Horn from the University of Virginia, and I'm very proud to welcome you to this edition of our 2023-2024 Foundations of Biomedical Data Science Seminar Series. This lecture series is supported by UVA's Integrated Translational Health Institute of Virginia, the UVA College of Arts and Sciences, the UVA School of Data Science, and through a grant from the National Institutes of General Medical Sciences. Since 2016, the Foundations of Biomedical Data Science Seminar Series has put a focus on the use of data science methodologies, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and statistical modeling as they pertain to the different themes in biomedical and health sciences. Our theme for this year is focused on building partnerships for generative AI training in biomedical and clinical research, where every Friday we will enjoy talks from a range of leading thinkers about the issues, the promises, the opportunities, and the hurdles associated with the emerging challenges in AI-based methods applied to biomedical science data types. Indeed, we'd like to make sure that we mention that to our folks that our 2023-2024 application cycle is open, and we encourage junior faculty members working in areas such as the development of generative AI-based methods applied to biomedical research, and those junior faculty actively utilizing AI in their biomedical teaching should consider applying. We believe this is an exciting and engaging program, bringing together AI platform developers with university-level educators to better understand the power, the promise, and potential perils associated with the generative AI explosion. Participants selected for our Biomedical Data Science Innovation Lab program will leverage seminars like this one as vital materials for our culminating in-person manuscript and grant project development workshop to be held at the Bahia Beachfront Resort located in sunny San Diego, California in June of 2024. Today, I am delighted to welcome our speaker, Dr. Stephen Baek from the University of Virginia's School of Data Science. Dr. Baek is an associate professor of data science, where he is an applied geometer, engineer, data scientist with a keen interest in geometric data analysis. He applies computational differential geometry, computer vision, and machine learning to address problems in physics, mechanical engineering, material science, sports science, and medicine. He has been a principal investigator of various research projects funded by the federal government and industry sponsors such as the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, the Air Force, the Army, NASA, Department of Transportation, and Hyundai Motors, amongst others. In continuing with our 2023-2024 Biomedical Data Science Seminar Series theme, Stephen's lecture today is entitled, Can AI Uncover the Laws of Physics by Observing Apples Falling from Trees? Stephen will tell us about the moving beyond mere pattern recognition, that machines are now capable of extracting new insights from hidden trends and patterns and generating lifelike images and coherent text and making complex decisions in intricate environments. All these advances and all this progress is happening at an astonishing rate, but it begs the question of whether AI will eventually attain the level of intelligence required to delve into highly intellectual pursuits like comprehending the fundamental laws of physics. In this presentation, Dr. Baek will highlight some of the recent frontiers in physics-aware deep learning and demonstrate their application in solving complex mechanical engineering problems, ranging from designing composite materials to predicting quantum spin dynamics, and consider how these might be appropriate for their subsequent use in biomedicine. As always, we are streaming this lecture live and for recording via YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. Also, our specially selected 2023-2024 Biomedical Data Science Innovation Lab participants and alumni are encouraged to submit any questions they have via the chat feature in their YouTube sessions. I will be synthesizing these questions and asking them on your behalf during the last 10 minutes or so of the lecture. And with that, Stephen, welcome. We are very excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you so much, Jack. Appreciate it. That's a great introduction. So I think everybody who is watching this video would know what this picture up here means. This is a picture of Isaac Newton. And this famous, story about the discovery of the gravity, right? So Newton was sitting in under the tree, and then there's, all of a sudden an apple, fall on the ground. And then, Newton was thinking, if the apple falls down from the tree while the moon, stays up there, what is the governing physics, defining all this, phenomena in our world, was kind of the question that he pondered. And then, as a result of that, he discovered the law of, the physical law governing the universe of gravitation, which is the equation that you're seeing over here. So as a data scientist, I have a similar question. So let's say, we have a machine or a robot or a computer algorithm, and then we show an apple falling from the tree, and then we ask the robot to figure out what the governing law of that apple falling from the tree would be. Of course, computer algorithms are not that smart, so probably we're going to need a lot of data. So instead of just one apple, falling from a tree, we're going to need like millions of apples falling from different initial conditions. But still, the question is, given that there is enough data, would machines and machine learning algorithm be able to figure out the governing dynamics of an apple falling down from the tree? So that's going to be the story that I'll be telling today, and especially right now I'm not very active in the area of biomedical application. I'm mostly working on physics problems and material science problems, but just to help the audience to connect the dots between what I do versus what you folks are potentially interested. I brought some examples from other people's publications. So this is not from my group's research, but one example of where this kind of physics could be incorporated, and then machine learning algorithms could potentially be able to understand the dynamics, is the activities in brain, where we basically have these electric signals and activations dynamically changing according to some governing equation defining the activities of the brain. So if we can collect enough data of the brain functions, then the question is, will machine learning algorithms be able to discover that governing equation defining the brain activities of the human brain? Or similarly, the dynamics of cells. So this example over here, again, is from other people's research, but this is a cancer cell dynamics. And as you can see, a lot of things are moving around here. So the algorithm that I'm going to present today is going to be mostly on things like fluid dynamics and the traditional mechanics. But I feel like this kind of biological behavior could also be modeled using some similar physics governing equations, where the cell growth can be represented using the diffusion phenomena. This is kind of analogous to the diffusion phenomena in fluids. The movements of the cell is analogous to advection. Sometimes the cells are newly created or divides or dies out. Those are kind of the reactive dynamics in fluids. And again, if a machine learning algorithm is able to figure out fluid dynamic properties and the movement of fluids and things like that, then the similar principle could also be applicable to the analysis of biological cells. And here's another similar example where the potential kind of intersection between what I'm about to present and then the interest of the audience. So here's electrophysiology of the human heart. And then you can see this, the electromagnetic field is evolving over time. And then this is actually an application of some other group in Italy where they applied machine learning algorithm actually to model the physics dynamics equation of the cardiac electrophysiology. So those are kind of the potential directions where my presentation may intersect with your world. So With that, my name is Stephen Baek. I'm Associate Professor of Data Science. I'm also a mechanical engineer by training. So I hold a secondary appointment with the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering here at the University of Virginia. And today I'm going to be presenting with the topic of, can AI uncover the laws of physics by observing from data? So today, since a lot of my work recently has been focused on material science, I'll be using the material science example in this presentation, but hopefully, you'll be able to connect this, this research with the biomedical applications at the end of the presentation. So what you're seeing up here is a material called HMX. HMX is part of an explosive. So this is a highly energetic material, and HMX is basically used for propellants and explosives in various military and civilian applications. The way it works is basically when a shock is applied to HMX, the shock will induce the collapse of the HMX crystals and then the microscopic structures over there. And then as those microscopic structures collapse due to the shock, they will release a huge chemical energy. And then if the energy released by the crystals, these microscopic structures, is large enough, then the chemical energy will turn into some high temperature regions called hotspots, which are the blobs that you're seeing from this movie over here. And when there are sufficiently many hotspots, enough to, create a self-sustaining combustion, then, the things will start to blow off. But on the other hand, when we don't have enough hot spots with, not enough strength or densities, then nothing is going to happen, and the heat will just dissipate. That's kind of the dynamics that we're interested in over here. So for many regions concerning the safety and the performance of these energetic materials, understanding the number, predicting the number of hot spots and then how fast they will grow is actually a very important question, because if there are too many hot spots, happening, evolving violently, then that means the material gets, too sensitive, and even for a small amount of shock, things will, blow off. Whereas if there is not enough hot spots created, then, when the energy needs to be delivered, it will fail to deliver that energy, and then, we're going to have an issue over there. So the adjusting the sensitivity of the material is actually a very critical research question in this area. And then a lot of people are actually using computer simulations to see how these hotspots evolve under different, shock input loading conditions, or, based as a function of different microscopic structures. But the problem is, one simulation usually takes about a day or more on a DoD supercomputer. So this is kind of a devastating challenge if you think about it, because if you're a person who's interested in the relationship between the microstructural design versus the hotspot behavior, then what you would like to do is to create a lot of, microstructure specimen and then run computational simulations. And then from those data, you would, like to see the trend in terms of, what are those microstructural parameters that will determine the number of hotspots created, and so on and so forth. But then if one simulation takes, such a long time, then it's going to be, practically impossible to understand that relationship. So my research, this particular project started with this research question that, how can we approximate the governing equation of the hotspot dynamics as a function of those microstructures? So what we first did was to define this generic form of dynamics equation. So here, what you're seeing is First of all, mu is the variable that represents the morphology of the microstructure, and then x is basically our quantity of interest, which in this case, in our case, a temperature and pressure field is represented by the vector x. And what this equation tells us about is the rate of change, the dynamics of the temperature and the pressure change as a function of the current temperature and current pressure and the microstructure morphology. Now, the idea here is, since the relationship F is unknown, and we don't really know the exact relationship between the temperature dynamics and the microscopic structures. So the only thing that we can rely on is basically some statistical model parameterized by the variable theta over here. In particular, we decided to use convolutional neural network, a type of a deep neural network that a lot of people use to solve a variety of different computer vision problems. So in some sense, this is sort of a computer vision problem because our variable x is the temperature field, and it's basically like a movie that you saw from the previous slide. So we thought this would be a nice and interesting computer vision problem in some sense. So we decided to use convolutional neural network to model the dynamics. And then, like I said earlier, the variable theta here is the model parameter defining the convolutional neural network. So in our case, this is the unknown that we're trying to learn from a data set. And then the epsilon over here is the stochastic noise and the prediction error. Now, assuming that we can learn that relationship as a parameter, as a parametric function of theta, then we can predict the future state of the temperature field and the pressure field as an integral, as a time integral of that dynamics over here. So the dx dt gets integrated from for a given time interval. And then since we can model this dx dt using convolutional neural network, by integrating the output of the convolutional neural network, we should be able to make a prediction of the future state of the material system, is basically the idea. Now, all of this idea, at the end of the day, boils down to this kind of a neural network architecture where we have the two main things over here. So the first thing is this purple box called the differentiator CNN. So that is essentially the dxdt over here, or the convolutional neural network F that models the dynamics dxdt. So that's our purple box in this diagram. And what this purple box does is to take the current temperature and the pressure as an input alongside the microstructure geometry as an input, and then makes a prediction of the dt/dt, the dx dt, the rate of change of temperature, the rate of change of pressure as an output. So that's what the differentiator CNN does. And then the integrator CNN is basically a data-driven approximation of this integral operator over here. So by integrating the output of the differentiator CNN, we can predict the future state of the temperature field and the pressure field. So in this diagram, that's basically what we're doing over here. By taking this dx dt as an input, alongside the current temperature and the current pressure, we make a prediction of the future temperature and the future pressure after a time step delta t. Now what happens over here is we then use the same differentiator CNN recursively, and then make a prediction of the rate of change of temperature and the rate of change of pressure again. And then we integrate that to predict the temperature and the pressure in after a time delta t again. And then by repeatedly applying this differentiator and integrator, we can basically make a prediction of the dynamics, how the temperature and the pressure of this hotspot dynamics evolve over time. And then the training is basically just the L2 loss, or the mean square error between the predicted temperature and the ground truth temperature, as well as the predicted pressure and the ground truth pressure. And then those are compared literally pixel by pixel. And then the neural network, so the both differentiator CNN and the integrator CNN learns the neural net parameters to minimize the discrepancy between the prediction and the ground truth. So after training this algorithm, we were able to achieve a pretty decent prediction result. So here, what you're seeing is the prediction result of this algorithm, which, by the way, is called the physics-aware recurrent convolutions. So, or in other words, PARC in short, because here we have a convolutional neural network architecture that is recursively applied over time. So that's recurrent convolutions. And then this is indeed a physically inspired neural network architecture. So the name physics aware. Now, using this algorithm, we can actually do a pretty good job in predicting the temperature dynamics of different microstructure specimens. So for in this slide, what you're seeing is for this given microstructure specimen, this is the computational simulation result from that expensive simulation, which took about a day on a supercomputer. And then here we see the prediction result of the deep learning algorithm. And then as you can see that the location of hotspots and then their growth rates are very similar to the ground truth. And then there are some other material specimens with varying size of crystals, different orientations, different porosities, and things like that. And then as you can see, the hotspot patterns are all different according to the microstructural geometry. And then as you can see, the PARC algorithm was able to capture those different locations and everything. So quantitatively speaking, we could see that PARC was able to capture the hotspot dynamics pretty well. Except for the fact that it sort of underestimated the absolute value of the temperature, about 500 kelvins. But other than that, we could see a very good agreement between the PARC predicted result and then the ground truth simulation. Now, you may think that, well, still this is not perfectly accurate, and then this is not giving perfectly valid representation of the real physical phenomena. But considering the fact that the traditional more accurate computer simulation takes about a day on a high performance computing cluster versus PARC requires less than a second on a regular laptop, that actually creates a huge difference. And at the end of the day, simulations are simulations. So simulations also are not the most accurate representation of the physical world. And then, considering the tremendous gain in the computational speed, we can say that this PARC algorithm is actually quite beneficial in terms of analyzing and predicting the hotspot temperature dynamics in energetic materials. So this kind of leads to a discussion about the vision that the big picture that we're kind of thinking of and where my group is currently heading towards. So as a matter of fact, we are using a lot of deep learning algorithms to facilitate the process of designing new functional materials and engineering material properties by changing the microstructures and things like that. So what you're seeing here is this relationship between the morphometric characteristics of the microstructure versus the dynamics of of detonation. And as you can see, in this particular example, we're comparing the different sizes of HMX crystals. And as you can see, for small crystals, we get to see a lot more violent and dynamic process compared to the larger crystals. And the hope over here is to use this kind of deep learning algorithm to create a design loop, basically, where we can find the sort of a sweet spot in terms of the material, the micromorphometry in achieving certain design goals. So, for example, let's say you're interested in designing a material that has certain desired properties and performance characteristics. And what we are able to do is to create digital specimens or digital twins of the materials using a deep fake algorithm. So this is a generative AI. Traditionally, we use the generative adversarial neural networks, but nowadays we're exploring also diffusion modeling. But this is basically a deep fake algorithm that can synthesize synthetic microstructures. And then by using the synthetic microstructures, what we are able to do is to rapidly estimate the physical performance of the material using the algorithm like Park. And then, by comparing the predicted performance with the design specification, we can, have this kind of a design loop where, our algorithm is basically modifying this this digital twin and the design parameter of the material specimen until we get to reach the performance characteristics that we're looking to achieve. So speaking of deepfake, here's a little bit of overview of our previous work where we developed this generative adversarial network that takes in certain numerical parameters to control the morphometric characteristics of the synthetic microstructure. So it can not only generate some realistic microstructure specimen, but also it can control the properties of those specimens. So as you can see in this example, we can change the orientation of the crystals. We can also change the size distribution of the crystals, and so on and so forth. Now, I would like to kind of take a deeper dive into this physics-aware machine learning business, because at the very core of this this grand vision is this idea of machine learning algorithm aware of physics. So, what is physics aware versus physics naive? In other words, why can I not just use any other deep learning algorithm to perform the same task? So I think the problem in the physics community here in adapting deep learning and all this progress in machine learning is that the outputs of machine learning algorithms are not guaranteed to follow certain physical rules. So for example, in traditional mechanics, we all know that moving objects will follow this, rule defined by Newton, F equals to ma. But if you just throw in data and then pray for your neural network to learn something about this relationship, then the chance is the actual output of the neural network will not necessarily follow this strict relationship called F equals to ma. So we're kind of seeing a similar situation over here when it comes to the material physics as well. There are certain governing rules and dynamics, but if you just train a deep neural network to learn that relationship, then the chance is it'll not be able to learn that very well. So as a matter of fact, we compared our algorithm Park against other physics naive algorithms. So one kind of point of comparison was UNet, which is very widely used in a variety of different applications. And then here we have this algorithm called the Imaginator, which is a very famous video generation algorithm in the computer vision community. So none of these two are physically aware. And as a result of that, first of all, we can see that the growth rate of Hotspot is not necessarily accurate compared to the ground truth result. And then also, interestingly, in case of Imaginator, especially as you look at this part over here, the dynamics is not continuous. So the physics naive algorithms doesn't necessarily know this continuous evolution of the temperature field and then the growth of hotspots. We could see that a lot of this prediction result was kind of a fluctuating and sort of discontinuous in terms of how the hotspots grow and how hotspots appear and disappear. In order to further validate the physics awareness of Park, we also kind of tested the algorithm on the time steps that were not included in the training data set. So here, what we're seeing is the prediction result of Park up to 27 nanoseconds. That sounds like a very small number, but in the dynamics of detonation, that's actually fairly long time step. And Park was trained initially to predict up to 15 nanosecond time interval. And then up to that point, it did a pretty good job. And then we were curious, if Park would be able to predict the dynamics and the evolution of hotspots beyond this 15 nanoseconds. And then we could see that it followed the general trend of the hotspot evolution quite well, not only for this particular microstructure, but also a variety of other microstructures. And as a matter of fact, the plot was, the quantitative validation was also indicated that the predicted result beyond the simulation time was pretty accurate compared to the ground truth, except for the absolute temperature value. So interestingly, earlier I mentioned that it was about 500 Kelvin sort of underestimated in case of Park. But then as we go beyond 15 nanosecond, you can see this kind of, the trend kind of flips. Now, Park sort of overestimate the temperature. So other than that, we are generally happy with the result of Park prediction. And then I think this is indicative of the physics awareness of Park architecture. Now, I think many of you, even in biomedical engineering, many of you, I think, will be familiar with this recent line of work called the physics-informed neural network, or PIN. And for those of you who are already familiar with PIN, I think it is right to sort of compare PIN and Park and how they are different in terms of learning the physics. So, in machine learning, there are roughly 3 different, ways of learning physics from data. The first thing is observational bias approach. And observational bias approach is, in some sense, the most physics naive approach, where you just hope the machine learning algorithm to learn some physical rules from the data itself. And then there's no other intervention come into play. So that is probably the simplest, approach, but yet I think the most physics naive approach, which, I don't think is going to be very effective. I think the recent physics-informed machine learning research is primarily in the direction of this learning bias approach, where the idea is the physics governing equation is basically used as a training loss in the backpropagation process. And as a result of that, the PDE residual is basically used to update the neural network parameters so that, the neural network prediction not only, minimize the data error, the prediction error, but also the residual of the governing physics is kind of the learning bias approach. Whereas another sort of approach that you can think of is what is called the inductive bias approach, and this is basically Park. So in inductive bias approach, what we're hoping to achieve is to design a specific neural network architecture that inherently embed the physics rules and principle in the architecture itself. So the differentiator integrator architecture that I presented in PARC is a good example of that inductive bias approach. Now, in order to compare PIN and PARC, here's a little toy problem called the Burger's equation. This is probably one of the simplest fluid dynamics equation that is popularly used in computational fluid dynamics community for validation of an algorithm. So I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details of the actual physical meanings of this, but the idea is, given this governing equation, can PIN and PARC learn this fluid dynamic phenomena? And this is kind of the result of testing that hypothesis. So here's the ground truth. Initially, we have a Gaussian distribution of this fluid. And then according to that Burger's equation, I mean, the dynamics governed by the Burger's equation, you can see this fluid sort of moving toward the right bottom corner. And then we have an algorithm called the physics CRNet, which is basically a variant of one of the most recent variant of PIN. And then here we have a PARC algorithm. And as you can see, PARC does a fairly good job of predicting the ground truth, fluid dynamic behavior defined by the Burger's equation, whereas the physics CRNet seem to have a little bit of this jiggliness, or the what should I call it? This grid-like artifacts in the prediction result. But I think overall, in terms of the prediction performance, I think both PARC and PIN are quite good. Now, when we further investigated the prediction error and the solution quality, we could actually see that the result of PARC, sorry, I forgot to include the legend, but the dashed line over here is the result coming from PARC, and then the solid line is the result coming from PIN. And then we're plotting the error in a log scale. So the top row is the prediction error. So this is the data loss. And then the bottom row is the residual of the governing physics. So again, how far off the prediction result from the physics defined by the Burger's equation is plotted at the bottom. And then in general, PARC seems to perform better than the PIN algorithm. And then, as you can see over here, we plotted this scatter plot where the horizontal axis is the PDE residual, and then the vertical axis is the prediction error. And then the red dots over here is the result from PARC, which is overall more accurate in, not only in prediction error, but also in the PDE residual. And then we have this physics CRNet result where it is a little bit off from this y equals to x line over here. So that is also sort of indicative of the fact that PARC is indeed physics aware, compared to other physics-informed neural network algorithms. Now, I think what is most exciting about PARC, and especially in the relation to biomedical applications, is that what if you don't know the governing equation? So like in case of the Burger's equation example, we already had this governing equation analytically defined. So we knew everything about the dynamics. And then the challenge was basically about how well we can approximate that a readily known governing equation. But I suspect in a lot of problems in biomedical applications, we don't really know the governing equation defining the dynamics of biological systems. At least we only know, partially what the dynamics look like. So for those kind of situations, can we still learn and discover the governing equation? Is kind of a reasonable question to ask. And my answer to that is yes, we are actually able to discover that. The energetic material example is actually an archetype of such problem where we don't fully know the governing equation of the material system. So in case of Park, this is learned from without knowing the actual governing equation. And then same thing over here in case of Pin. Again, we train the algorithm without actually telling what the governing equation is, because we don't have the full set of governing equations for this problem. And as you can see over here, Park is still able to predict the hotspot dynamics, despite the fact that we didn't know the governing equation in an analytical form. So again, I cannot think of a very specific biomedical application, but hopefully from this result, you'll be able to connect the dots between what I'm telling over here in the material example with the research topic that you might be interested in. So for the interest of time, let me just move a little bit. So another thing that I want to present over here is along the line of discovery of physics governing equations. I think the issues with deep learning and deep neural network models is that there are kind of a black box, and it's hard to interpret. And what my group is working on currently is to basically to open up this black box and see if we can find features that are actually useful in describing the dynamics over here. So one such example here is what is called a saliency map. I think a lot of people are here in the audience are familiar with this techniques called GradCam or saliency map techniques and things like that. Those are one of the most widely used machine learning, deep learning visualization algorithms to reveal the reasoning process of deep neural network prediction. So long story short, what saliency map does is to visualize where this hot temperature regions comes from. So in other words, what was the reason that the neural network believed that there was going to be a hot, high temperature region? And then we can use a backpropagation algorithm to sort of track down what were the causes of those high temperature regions in the prediction result. And this is kind of an overlay of those, the track down result, where we highlighted the image regions in the input microstructure image that the neural network believes to have led to the formation of hotspots. And then what's really interesting to me here is that even before all this deep learning business, the energetic material community has empirically discovered that the cracks and voids are actually the main players in the detonation of energetic materials. So one thing that was pretty interesting to me was that all this saliency map result highlighted the voids and cracks in the material microstructures, not the crystals themselves. So that, I think, is indicative of the fact that Park was actually able to learn the dynamics in a physically meaningful fashion, as opposed to some random combination of features. But also another interesting thing was, so we sort of plotted the saliency map, and then some voids were highlighted and some voids were not highlighted. So which meant that some of the voids were critical in the formation of the hotspots, and then some voids were not super critical in the formation of hotspots. So we've kind of gathered those what we call critical voids and non-critical voids. So critical voids are the ones that are highlighted by the saliency map, and then non-critical voids are the ones that are not highlighted by the saliency map. And then we sort of compare them to see if there's any meaningful difference. And surprisingly, I mean, even from the glance of the void geometry, even with the naked eyes, we can see that there's some difference between the critical voids and the non-critical void. I think the most prominent thing is that there's a certain size distribution of the critical voids, whereas non-critical voids are just like everywhere in terms of the size. And then also you can see that the critical voids are sort of lying flat, whereas non-critical voids have all kind of different orientations. Some are vertical, some are slanted, and so on and so forth. And when we quantitatively compare the two, we could actually find some statistically meaningful trends between critical voids and non-critical voids. So right now we're actually working with more theoretical people trying to understand the physics of energetic material dynamics, and then we're also working with the computational modeling people to kind of distill a new set of knowledge from the result learned by a deep neural network algorithm. And that's kind of one of the ways that an AI could be useful for scientific discovery, not only in material science, but I think in biomedical applications. I think you would be able to find those kind of applications very well. So that so far has been the ongoing research. And before I conclude, I'll mention briefly some of the future directions that we're currently working on. One of the let me just skip this slide. One of the critical limitations of the earliest version of Park was the fact that it was only for diffusion dominant phenomena. So we actually had to normalize the evolution of the temperature field so that we can get rid of all the advection phenomena. And as a result of that, for unnormalized data, so for the data that contains the advection terms, you can see the Park version 1 doesn't do a very good job in predicting the dynamics. So in order to overcome that, we recently developed this new version of Park where we can now consider the advection and reaction terms on top of the diffusion dominant phenomena. So we have this momentum equation over here and the energy equation. And then by including those two, we were able to achieve a lot better prediction result, as you can see over here. So on the top row, we have the ground truth. And then Park version 1, you can see that it only kind of captures the overall growth of the pattern, but it doesn't really capture this, like swirly shapes as a result of the advections, whereas Park version 2 seems to be doing a much better job in detecting those. And then another thing is we also wanted to vary the operating condition of the Park. So again, the initial Park paper only contained the result of a very particular shock loading condition, which was 9.5 gigapascal. And then the initial version of Park wasn't able to generalize to other operating conditions. So the idea that we also explored is this idea of style vector in generative adversarial networks, where basically we're intentionally biasing the prediction result based off of some scalar parameters. So using this idea, what we were able to do is to bias the prediction results. So 9.5 gigapascal is what Park was originally trained for, and then here's a weaker shock loading, and as a result of that, if you look at the ground truth, we have a lot lesser hot spots formed as a result of that shock. And then Park, without having to add a lot more data, we were able to make a pretty good prediction of that phenomena by using this style vector idea. And then same thing goes with much stronger shock here, where instead of 9.5 gigapascal, now we have 15 GPa. And then as you can see, Park, again, without having to add a lot more data, we have a pretty good prediction result over here. So these are kind of the ongoing direction of research. With that, I think for the interest of time, I'll just stop here, and then in case that there's any question from the audience, I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much. This was really, really cool. I really, really like this. And from the point of view of like biophysical systems where things like this might be handy, I would imagine things like, just like, even if it's like outside of the physical body, but like an epidemiological application, how a virus might spread through a number of individuals. For example, there's a famous example called Fisher's equation, which is sort of the propagation of an allele with a particular frequency spreading through a population. And so population genetics folks look at models like that. There's also like metabolic processes or gene expression where genes are being, kind of activated in a system with a relative to a PDE. Motor responses from muscle fibers and how those respond in a jointed system like an arm or a leg or something like that. And then, of course, stuff that I really like is, neural action potentials like Hodgkin-Huxley models, which are also partial differential equations. And so there's all manner of different PDEs that exist in biophysics and physiology and various other systems that these kind of things would be very appropriate for.
I agree.
Have you explored any of those?
No, not at the moment. So right now, my group is pretty busy with a few of the grants from the Department of Defense and the National Science Foundation, highly focused on material science research. But we were actually kind of exploring how we can kind of expand our horizon and then find different applications. And then biomedical obviously was one of the directions that we're hoping to move forward to, but nothing very specific or tangible at the moment. So I'll be open to ideas and suggestions from the audience, or even like if there's anybody interested in collaborating, I'll be interested in exploring those ideas.
One of the things which I think was particularly interesting is that you mentioned that, ordinarily solving some of these models, requires between 16 and 30 hours on a high performance computing system. And with some of these models, you get a pretty good guess, at least an initial guess, in under a second using commodity hardware. And I'm kind of just curious if when you then take these methods and you put them on a supercomputer, you should probably get a very high fidelity answer in, no, hardly any time at all, certainly better than 16 to 30 hours. Have you done that? And are you able to see those kind of performance improvements?
So that's a great question, Jack. And frankly, that was the initial kind of motivation behind this research. We wanted to come up with a good initial estimate of the solution so that we can, accelerate the simulation. So the idea is basically to, make a rapid guess of the initial solution using Park, and then using that as an input. Now the more rigorous, physics code should be able to converge to a rigorous solution in much faster speed, was the initial idea. But then we sort of came to this, I don't know, not a conclusion, but we came to this thought that maybe that's sort of an overkill when it comes to this particular application, because one current missing block right now is that we haven't validated this on an actual physical experiments. And the simulation model, I mean, simulation model is also just a, a numerical characterization of some, actual physics. And then, I mean, in the simulation community, there's a saying that, no models are accurate, but some models are useful, right? So
Sure.
all models are basically wrong. So there's certain, discrepancy between the real physics versus what the simulation captures. So given that, like, do we even want to, achieve that incremental improvement, of the park prediction when, the simulation will anyways give us some, erroneous results. So if that is going to be the case, why don't we just use this as is, and then, try to use it for, something more useful, was kind of the, the flow of thoughts. But yeah, I mean, like, your idea of using Park as an initial condition for a simulation solver is perfectly valid. And then there are, as a matter of fact, people, trying to use neural networks to boost the solution process of partial differential equations. So that's perfectly, useful idea that already a lot of people are exploring.
One other thing is does Park actually return to you a solution to the, not a solution to the equation, but actually what the governing equation happens to be? So I mean, what the examples you show look like they're, producing a result which emulates the underlying, the physical thing that you're trying to do, but does it actually spit back a thing saying, oh, del 2 of some process is equal to the, basically it's that equation. But like, for example, what if it were the wave equation, would it be able to return the form of the wave equation, for example?
So that is a wonderful question, and that is, in fact, a research problem of one of my postdocs. So right now, I think the current limitation of the, this whole physics-informed machine learning research, not only Park, but also, many other, machine learning approaches. I think the limitation is that we're just giving a parametric approximation of that unknown, governing equation.
Sure.
And we only, approximate the optimal configuration of theta that defines the neural network. We don't really return the actual ordinary differential, actual governing equation terms. So there is a line of research in this area where people are trying to figure out, what is the functional form, instead of like this humongous set of numerical values that defines, the neural network weights. What are the actual, meaningful physics governing equations that are human interpretable is kind of, one of the direction that, people are heading into. And my group is kind of, working on the same, sort of a problem, which is why, the saliency map result that I presented in the later part of this, presentation, is also to sort of, open up this black box and then try to, distill, more useful form of equation, as opposed to a collection of, millions of neural network parameters. So that is kind of, really interesting research question for the future.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because as you get at these neural networks, they have a gajillion number of hidden layers and all the connections between them. And it's not very compact, right? You
Right.
couldn't like go and say, oh, here's the Schrodinger equation, or here's the heat equation, which would be, those are the basis for a lot of different physical models, or derivations thereof. And, we have this very complicated data. It would be nice to be able to compress, solve them, but then be be able to show, and here's the canonical form of this as an actual PDE, because some of the parameters of those PDEs are very important to understanding the dynamics of those systems. And I'm thinking of like speed and signal, say, transduction velocity or wavefront velocity, which give you a lot of information about the dynamics of these systems. And you described that a little bit in one of your earlier examples, but having it in that final form would be very, very handy. So
that's right. That's right. So like going back to this slide, I mean, at the current stage, we're not able to give this, specific form of equation here, but we can predict the force, for example, very well with some black box, machine learning algorithm that takes, the mass and the distance as an input. But currently we're unable to tell this, very specific form of equation. So,
well, it sounds like you are well on your way, Steve. So we're at the top of the hour. So I want to thank you again, Steve, for really giving us an inspiring talk, because this is really cool stuff, because it really puts a foundation onto some of these black box neural network approaches that, they give us an answer that looks great, but it doesn't have any, like you sort of said, we sort of trust that these things may have some bearing in reality. And it would be actually nice to have them, physically informed so that we can actually put some more trust in them. So thank you for sharing this great work. And thank you for giving us a lot to think about. And so thank you again. And thanks to everybody who joined us, and have a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.